I love you.
That's a copy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Cam, and welcome back to The Road to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This is the series where I've covered every Spider-Man film on my channel I've yet to cover in honor of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse coming out in just about a week. I've covered everything from the Raimi trilogy to the web films. The playlist link will be in the eye in the right-hand corner. Go check it out if you are so inclined. But for the final stop on the road, it's only right that I revisit Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, released in 2018, and probably the greatest 180 in animation studios history. Sony Pictures Animation going from the Emoji Movie to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. But I look forward to discussing that whiplash effect with my guest for this review. He's been on the channel before when we were talking that last Airbender movie from M. Night Shyamalan that we do not discuss anymore. However, this will be 1,000 times better of a movie to talk about. It is Mike, the novice cinephile. Mike, how are you doing?
Thanks for having me back. I'm doing great. Talking about the 180, just the last episode I joined you on, and then this film by itself is insane. The highs and lows of cinema, right? But yeah, this is one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. So when you extended the offer of covering Spider-Verse with you, I had to jump at the chance because I love talking to you and I love talking about this incredible movie.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. Why don't you tell everyone? Why don't you tell everyone about yourself and your channel?
Yeah, my name is Mike. I have various YouTube channels, main one being Novice Cinephile, where I'm breaking down movies and television on a very infrequent basis. There's also the Chatter After channel where we're doing movie reviews there. We also have a show where we're breaking down news. Ryan's been on there numerous times. We're going to have to restart that again one day very soon. And also Collider.com, I'm writing there. We also just had a video go up not too long ago for Guardians of the Galaxy 3, where I interviewed some members of the cast for that film as well. So yeah, I've been around talking movies, specifically superhero movies. And if you're into that stuff, you can find me at the Chatter After, Novice Cinephile, and of course, Collider.com.
Yeah, Mike's moving up in the world. He's a part of the upper crust now, so to have him on is greatly appreciated.
Stop.
Well, let's dive into Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and I don't think I really need to give a synopsis. I think just by saying that title, everyone knows exactly what they're getting into. It's honestly, I think one of the most celebrated, not just animated movies, but superhero movies of all time. It's only 5 years old. It's celebrating 5 years in December, and yet you cannot talk about it with someone and just hear nothing but glowing praise. Mike, just overall general thoughts. What do you think of this movie?
I love it. I love everything about it. To me, this is what Spider-Man is about. Every movie before and after this that focused on the world of Spider-Man, and I know this is about Miles, not necessarily Peter, but the idea that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created in 1960s, right? The idea that anyone can be a hero, that this kid has to learn to pull his life together and become the hero of his city. That is what Into the Spider-Verse is about. That's what the central theme of this movie is. And I love how throughout all of the multiversal nonsense, you have to remember, Ryan, this is the first superhero movie that really took grasp of that multiverse concept, right? We had Doctor Strange come after, we've got the Flash coming up. And so for them to introduce the concept of the multiverse while also at the heart of it still being a Miles Morales story, I think is what makes this film so special. It does a lot in a short runtime, all things considered, what it has to tackle. So my relationship with this movie is very, very special in that regard because you said it's 5 years old and it doesn't feel like it. Like this became a classic, like right off the bat when it came out. It's insane.
Yeah, no doubt. And about the runtime, to kind of piggyback off of that, the movie's an hour and 57 minutes, and it balances it balances a lot. It spins a lot of plates, and I think it's all done very well. You know, and I was thinking about this earlier today, Mike. 2018 was low-key a pretty epic year for superhero movies because just in Marvel alone, you got Black Panther, you got
Mhm.
Avengers Infinity War, you got this, and I'm sure I'm missing a big one at Ant-Man and the Wasp, yes, but just like if you just put one of those movies in any year, that would be a rousing success for a studio. But Marvel Studios was just like, you know what? Let's just put all three in one year because why not?
Yeah, it goes back to Sony. I really think Sony knew what they had here, and like that's what's been frustrating about like the Sony Spider-Man universe is that they're focusing on Venom and Morbius and all these other characters, and it's like just pull any member of the Spider-Verse cast. You know how easy it would be to just keep the same actor. Shamik Moore can still be an older Miles Morales in live action. Haley Steinfeld can still play Spider-Gwen in live action. It's right there, and they're focused on all this other stuff, and they really struck gold here with Lord and Miller, of course, taking over. I think that is really the ingredient to the secret sauce of this movie. But did you want to dive into specifics? Like, I wanted to hear your thoughts on Miles Morales as a character, because when he was first introduced in the comics, it was very divisive. We're introducing another Spider-Man. We killed Peter Parker in that universe. A lot of controversy arose from that, but I feel like this movie handles it in such a way that new audiences instantly got it. What was your experience meeting some of these characters for the first time?
Well, to be completely honest, I wasn't super familiar with Miles Morales before this
Mhm.
movie. I knew that there were other Spider-Men. I knew Peter Parker passed away, and I knew people like Ben Riley took the mantle. I remember there was this weird thing where like Norman Osborn or Doctor Octopus, like his brain, like a brain was involved and like put into another.
Yeah, Doc Ock possesses Peter's dead corpse.
Okay,
It
yes.
actually is a really good book. It sounds weird when you describe it, though. I definitely understand that.
Well, so I guess yes, I do understand that there are other Spider-Men and I guess Spider people at this point,
Yeah.
into the Spider-Verse, just opening the floodgates for like Spider Noir and Spider Gwen among others. So I knew of their existence. I just wasn't super familiar with it until
Mhm.
this movie, of course. Again, I didn't understand there was or I didn't know there was any controversy surrounding Miles. I guess maybe I just wasn't plugged into the space at the time, but I guess I missed that because, I just always was like, all right, another Spider-Man. This is cool,
Yeah.
so I guess I missed.
Very, very fortunate that you missed that, because that was you know, Afro Latino character is introduced. Also, simultaneously, Peter Parker is killed off. It was very awkward at the time as a comic book fan. But yeah, Miles is a fantastic character. He really shines in this movie. And rewatching this, one thing that kind of stuck out to me was out of all of the multiversal shenanigans, the first 20-30 minutes of this movie is focusing on Miles and his family. And that to me is again a testament to how good the writing is and how it keeps its focus on its main character. Because the opening of this film starts off with Peter Parker, who's blonde, to really highlight that this is a very different version of Spider-Man. It starts off with Peter Parker, right? And then Miles is introduced, and we are following his day-to-day life, him going to a new school, him meeting Gwen, him and his uncle, him and his parents. And I love that we're establishing Miles in his everyday life. So when that spider bites him, and I love how the spider bites him and it's built up to be this big thing, and Miles just shrugs it off like it was nothing. Really, really funny bit. But I love that at the heart of the story, we're constantly being reminded of who Miles is, what he's fighting for, what his life is. And once it starts to unravel, we understand why he wants to get it back and get some sense of normalcy back once things start to escalate. So that to me, again, is a testament to how strong and how tight this script is, because it starts off following this new character that a lot of us didn't know, and we instantly gravitate to him. And then we can introduce Jake Johnson as Peter B. Parker, which creates a whole new dynamic in the story.
Yeah, there's a great moment when we see Peter A. Parker for the first time where they
Mhm.
basically like poke fun at Spider-Man 3 and the whole like the dancing and the Bully
Yeah.
Maguire. I rewatched a clip of it and I'm like, this is so funny because, you know, I'm not a Spider-Man 3 hater. I actually defend it quite frequently. I understand
Mhm.
it's not perfect, and when people say they don't like it, I completely understand. But I guess I can rationalize it as Peter Parker has never been a bad guy before, and he thinks that this is what bad guys do, even though it's kind of not. But it's interesting in that way. But I
Yeah.
laughed at the part where where Chris Pine, the narrator, is like, "Yeah, this part we don't talk about this." I love that so much because if you know, you know, and if you don't know, then you're not missing out on anything. It's a meta reference, but you're not losing anything because, like, oh, well, that just flew over my head.
Yeah.
It's nice in that way.
It's great, and I'm glad you mentioned that moment, because that entire montage, it's paying tribute to Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man trilogy. Because think about it, we have the upside down kiss with Mary Jane, which is played for laughs in that clip from Spider-Man 1. We have him stopping the train from Spider-Man 2. Then we have the Bully Maguire scene from Spider-Man 3. And I think that really makes his upcoming demise even more tragic, right? Because in those small moments, even though it's very subtle, it's reminding you of, yeah, this is what we loved about those Spider-Man movies. That's our Spider-Man. So when he gets killed off by Kingpin, it hits a little bit different if he was just some random guy we met for 2 seconds, right? They're kind of subtly reminding us of what we love about Spider-Man, maybe some of the things we didn't like about Spider-Man. And so when Peter ultimately bites it, we have some sort of attachment because it's like, yeah, I remember when he fought Green Goblin or Doc Ock, or he took on Harry and Venom and Sandman, and now he's gone. And what happens from there, which I think is interesting.
Yes, very interesting indeed. And you know, it's like I said, I think this is a good place because Lord and Miller, with their former movies like Lego Movie, for example, I
Mhm.
feel like you should just give all the meta stuff to them because it feels like they understand and know what to do with it. Because you just see, I'm so tired of meta movies nowadays that be like, hey, we're poking fun at this. I'm like, shut up. Just tell me a good story, please. Like, even
Yeah.
if I've seen a version of it before, just do it well and I will be fine with it. But I feel like this is like it goes meta, but it's subtle with it and it doesn't come across as like a punching down kind of thing, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, for sure. I think the use of the meta humor here and kind of that commentary, it's just kind of aiding the story. It's not what the movie is built on. It's not built on those jokes or those moments, and I think that's very different. In some of the movies that you're referencing, I really think, like we were just talking about, they're using it to highlight specific moments. They use that context to kind of build a backstory for this version of Peter Parker, and then they use it going forward. Like the theme of this movie is great power, great responsibility, a theme that's in every Spider-Man story. But they're reusing what we know about the mythos and reintroducing it in new and fascinating ways. Like when we're introduced to this universe as Doc Ock, they use that as a shock because they know what we expect: middle-aged white dude as Dr. Octopus, but instead it's this lady who seems like she has a history with Aunt May, which that's a whole nother can of worms. I wonder if we're going to jump into later on. But yeah, I think they're really using it to manage our expectations because they know the source material. They know that we know the source material, and so that allows them the freedom to kind of play around with it in fun and interesting ways.
You brought up an interesting point that the first 20, 30 minutes or so is Miles Morales trying to fit in to this very, I want to say, preppy, like high school, like very
Yeah.
much like a, like he, like a very like upper middle class kind of high school and him like not fitting in that. I really liked how they approached that. I liked just meeting like Miles's family, like
Mm-hmm.
his dad, the cop, played by Brian Tyree Henry, by the way. Very good role there indeed. And then his
Yeah.
mom, who I appreciated there. I love the part, and it's referenced a lot, but I love the part where it's like, say I love you, and it's like that whole thing is like, I love you, Dad. Like, I love you, Dad. It's like it's such a nice little moment, but really, like you said, with all the craziness going on, one of the underpinnings of the movie is Miles and his dad. There's a great scene in the third act where it's like there's a
Yes.
door in between the father and the son, and it's not dwelled upon. It's not like overly dramatic music. Once you see it, it's done in a way to where us as audience members can go, "Oh, it's subtle, but it really works."
Yeah, to quote Taserface from Guardians 2, it's metaphorical.
Exactly.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, that's just again the testament to how tight this script is, because in its wake, we've seen a bunch of multiversal stories through Loki, through all these other types of shows and movies, and it can get very messy and confusing. And so I really appreciate that the heart of this movie is still Miles and his family, even his uncle, Mahershala Ali, fantastic as the Prowler. Um, but yeah, I really appreciate that, and that's what I'm hoping we get in the next movie as well, because that seems to be even bigger and crazier and more insane going forward. But once I really want the heart of the story, the meat of the story, to still be Miles and his family, because that to me is what makes this movie special. And that's why some of the live action superhero movies don't really do it for me. That's why movies like Guardians 3, right, where it's the heart of that story is still family. Not spoiling that in any way, but like when you focus on the humanity in the heroes, that's what's interesting to me, not them being super powerful beings. And I think that's why Spider-Man has endured for so long, because he's just a kid from Queens. In Miles's case, he's just a kid from Harlem, and I think that's special.
Yeah, 100%. I think you brought up Mahershala Ali. I mean, in general, Mahershala Ali, he just does not miss, but I think he
No.
does very fine work here.
Yeah, agreed. The entire cast is great. Like Jake Johnson as Peter B. Parker it's an amazing take on Spider-Man, and I think that is really the highlight of this movie. I think that's why this movie it's easy for people to latch onto than the Miles comics did. Not trying to harp on that too much, but by having Peter kind of guiding Miles through this story, it makes that transition easier, as opposed to when the comics did it. It's like, yeah, you're introduced to Miles a little bit, Peter dies, he's your new Spider-Man now. Whereas this is like, yeah, a version of Peter died, but now we get to see this other one whose life has kind of gone to crap, and he's trying to piece it back together as Miles is also trying to navigate high school. So that dynamic is very interesting. And his voice performance is fantastic. I love the energy tired Peter Parker gives off in this movie. It's comedic gold, along with Haley Steinfeld. Like, I think that trio is amazing. And then you had Nicolas Cage, which is just perfection, Spider-Man Noir.
Yeah, I was actually going to catapult into that, but you got Nicolas Cage as Spider-Man Noir. You got John Mulaney as Spider-Ham, which is something I did not know I needed, but I'm so glad that I got.
Yeah.
Kimoko Green as Penny Parker. I mean, just whoever. Catherine Hahn as Doc Ock. Honestly, a part of this movie that I don't think it's nearly talked about enough is
Mhm.
Liev Schreiber as Wilson Fisk. First of all, who came up with
Yes.
this design for Wilson Fisk? He looks enormous. He looks like an egg with arms and legs. And
I love it.
I know that this movie's very exaggerated in its animation style, and we will talk about that in a minute.
Mhm.
But I just look at this, I'm like, um, how is this in any way practical?
This guy ain't seen his dick since the Nixon administration.
Like, did he just subsist on like a diet of pizza and ice cream since he was like 2? Like, what happened here? And I understand that the Kingpin is, well, a larger character, for lack of a better term. But I
Yeah.
just look at it and go, like, this is just ridiculous. But it works for this animation style. That's my point. But I just look at it and go, like, wow, what happened here?
He is larger than life. Part of me wonders if his design it's just that it's very thematic of that's how big his presence is. That's how big of a threat he is in this city, in Spider-Man's universe. And so part of it I think is it's again metaphorical and kind of a reference to his presence in the movie, but also it's just funny. Like, and I think that's what makes this movie work, is that it's not afraid to just have fun. And like at the heart of it, that's again what Spider-Man is. Spider-Man has tragic moments tragic stories, but it still knows how to have fun, still knows how to remind you of the joys of life. And so I think Kingpin's incredibly goofy design, it's that perfect balance of, yeah, he's still freaking intimidating because he kills Spider-Man at the beginning of this movie, but also look at him. You can't look at him and not chuckle, especially when the camera is like zoomed in on his face, then it zooms out and you see how wide he is. Like he took up the whole frame. It's amazing.
Yeah, what makes the character effective in a way is that he does kill Peter. He does kill Spider-Man in like the first like third of the movie, and in a pretty violent way too. You just like he basically does like the double axe handle on him. It's just like
Yeah.
"Run!" and like
You what?
this isn't supposed to happen. But it just I remember when I first saw it, I'm like, this isn't this the what? It just took me completely off guard, but it worked.
Yeah, especially when you remember the marketing of this movie. There's two Spider-Man on the poster. And so we think we aren't aware when we're first viewing this that there's two versions of Peter Parker. And so when that happens, it's legitimate shock. And Chris Pine is so good. And I think that to me is one of the small highlights of this movie. You mentioned Liev Schreiber as Kingpin, how that's underrated. I think Chris Pine as this first Peter Parker was extremely, extremely good because he captured that spirit and that tone, that maturity you want from an older Peter Parker. And even that moment where he discovers Miles has spider powers and he instantly takes to him like, hey, I'll teach you once we get out of here. Like he's gonna be his sidekick and everything. And then he tragically, brutally gets murdered by Kingpin, which has to be one of the most devastating animated deaths here, at least in Western film, in years. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't think I've had a death affect me that much in an animated movie in a while. But yeah,
Yeah,
it was amazing performances.
for sure, for sure. I think this is as good a place as any to talk about the animation style because remember in my initial review, like directly, like I filmed it like literally after I got home from the theater, and I think my main criticism of it was I thought the animation style was too busy. I thought there was too much going on with everything just like flying at you. I was just like, wait, I need five. I need a 5 minute.
Yeah,
But honestly, like rewatching clips to prepare for this, I don't really mind it all that much now. I think in many ways is actually quite beautiful. Like when Miles like leaps off the building and the shards of glass like fall with him. You see
yes.
like Peter A. Parker's like, New York City with Coca-Cola and the right brands that we know, but then you see like in Miles's world, it's like Coca-Cola, but like spelled with like a K instead of a C. And you have like PDNY instead of NYPD. It's a mirror universe in that it's similar, but it's also different.
Yeah.
I think it's some of the most beautiful computer animation I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, this movie is gorgeous. And I think what makes it stand out again is this came out in 2018. So Disney is dominating in this space. I'm sure we had like Frozen, Moana, Tangled, all those movies came out, and they all have a very similar Disney aesthetic that we've come to know in their CG animation. And DreamWorks, Illumination, a lot of them kind of fell prey to emulate that. This one decided it's going to be its own thing. And that made it stand out even more at the time. And to this day, it still looks beautiful. I agree with both of your takes, though. It can be a lot. That 2 hour time span, like sometimes I was getting a headache with the flashing lights and all the colors and everything coming at the screen like that. It's almost going for 3D vibes, even though it is a 2D film, like 3D as in you need the glasses and everything type of 3D, not 3D animation. But yeah, it's beautifully animated. There are moments where it's cinematic. Like you can tell that a lot of care and time went into crafting the look and feel of this film because again, it's got the realistic features or some characters. It's got the extremely animated characters like Kingpin. Then you have Spider-Ham, who's just a Looney Tune the entire time, which finding that balance I thought was be very difficult, but they made it look effortless. And so that is easily a highlight. And to this day, you start to see more films emulate Spider-Verse as opposed to the Disney style. You have Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which feels like it's taking elements from Spider-Verse, but then still adding that Shrek like filter and quality and charm to it, which I think is kind of leading us into a new golden age of animation where we can have multiple types of animated styles and films, and not everything has to look like Frozen.
Yeah, that's for sure. I'm glad you brought up Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, because I remember like 15 minutes into that movie, I was like, they watched Into the Spider-Verse quite closely, and that's not meant to be a dig. That's meant to be a compliment because
Yeah.
that movie looks beautiful as well. But I guess the point of me bringing this up is that at the time I was like, I'm not sure how I feel, but I guess as time has gone on, the animation has just gotten so much. It's aged pretty well, at least for me.
Yeah, I think it being hyper stylized will keep its lasting power a bit more. Look at some classic Pixar films, right? Look at Toy Story 1. That is a fantastic movie. I love Toy Story, but also that is very dated, and I can't believe that's what Toy Story looks like 30 years later. Like Toy Story 4 is how I envisioned Toy Story 1 looking when it came out, right? Whereas a movie like The Lion King, for example, the art style that it's going for, it stands the test of time. And I think Spider-Verse is in that similar boat of it's not trying to be super realistic, it's being extremely stylized. So when we rewatch this movie for its 20-year anniversary, years from now, it'll still hold up in the same way movies like The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and Lion King do in the 2D space.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think this it's one thing that I did want to bring up is that I think maybe outside of maybe like say Skyfall, I don't think there was ever a song that was more intrinsically tied to a movie than Sunflower that was dropped by Post Malone and I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
can't remember I can't remember the name of the rapper now. But the Sunflower song, like you couldn't escape it in
No.
for like a solid year, it felt like. But it's a good song. And it really does tie into the theme of what they're going through. And then like What's Up Danger and the whole score is just fantastic, just in general.
The score is fantastic. Sunflower is a great song. It was definitely a summer jam when it came out in 2018. What's
Yeah.
Up Danger to me though, it's the one that stands out the most, mainly because the way that they scored this movie, I don't remember who the composer is on Into the Spider-Verse if you want to fact check me there, but what they do in that moment when Miles is on that building, which you were referencing earlier, and he leaps off and the music kicks in. What I love in that moment is that they sync up Miles's theme with What's Up Danger, and they're playing concurrently at the same time, and it creates this epic, insane like duet between the two songs that's not available anywhere else but this movie. It's not in the original score, it's not on any type of soundtrack, but it makes that moment 1,000 times better because it's taking What's Up Danger and blending it with the theme of the movie, Miles's theme music, and it creates a really, really great moment in the film that I respect that you can't get it anywhere but the movie Into the Spider-Verse. You can't find that version of the track anywhere online because they didn't release it. But yeah, it makes that moment stand out 1,000 times more for me.
And the composer for this movie was Daniel Pemberton. So that was the composer, and he did a fantastic job. Like
Incredible.
it's one of those scores that just is just so epic to me. And just like from Sunflower to What's Up Danger and everything in between, it just blends together just really nice. And
Yep.
the movie ends off with well, I guess who we're assuming is going to be the villain in Across the Spider-Verse, we later learn is Spider-Man 2099, which
Yep.
I never read any comic of his, but I remember playing or remember seeing him in this video game, Spider-Man something across time, like
Yeah.
it's
It
something like
was
that. And
it was one of the mini Spider-Man games that came out. Yeah.
Spider-Man Noir was also in that one as well. So I knew who 2099 was before I saw him here, voiced by Oscar Isaac, which was a great choice. But I
Mhm.
guess kind of looking to the future a little bit, I mean, Across the Spider-Verse looks incredible. I've seen every trailer at this point, and I'm just like, man, this movie can't get here fast enough. So it just
Yeah,
makes me wonder, like, how far down the rabbit hole are they going to go?
I know, right? Like it looks incredible. I can't wait to see Oscar Isaac fully in that film because he's a fantastic performer. Can't wait to see what they do with Spider-Man 2099. I do have a small concern that we're going to have too many spider people just off the trailers alone. Like we already know that they've confirmed multiple Spider-Man that we know of, Spider-Man PS4, so the Spectacular Spider-Man. These are all versions of Peter Parker that we've met in other media before, which is an interesting play on it. Um, but yeah, like I really feel like Oscar Isaac is going to be a great antagonist. I don't know if he's going to be so much a villain. I don't know if you can have a Spider-Man villain, that kind of defeats the purpose of who Spider-Man is, but I think he will bump heads with Miles a lot throughout this film, and I'm excited to see where they go with that.
Yeah, just looking at the poster for Across the Spider-Verse, which I've used in front of all of these reviews, like just looking at it, I'm like, I don't know who you are. I don't know who you are. I don't know who you are. And I'm not trying to be like a troll or anything. I just legitimately don't know who these people are. I hope that the movie does a good job explaining it, but I agree with your fear of like there may be too much going on. And like, all right, let's throw everyone in the pool. It was like, let's get the Japanese Spider-Man in there because why not? It was like let's not get. I hope they don't leap before they. I hope they don't leap before they look. I guess that's my fear.
Mine too, especially like we're introducing new Spider people like Spider Punk, like Daniel Kaluuya, I think is playing that character. Issa Rae is playing a Spider role in this movie. So I'm I'm excited. Like this is gonna be a long movie. They said it's like 2 hours, 30 minutes, right? Which is almost like a good 40 minutes longer than this one that we're covering today. So I'm excited on that front that I think they at least gave themselves enough runtime to manage it. But yeah, I'm interested to see. One thing about all these trailers that we've been looking at is that they're not revealing too much of what's going on. They're just brief clips, brief fun moments that are going to go viral on social media. But I still don't have a real grasp of what the movie's story is going to be, which adds a layer of mystery to it that I'm excited about.
Yeah, I did appreciate that. I'm glad you brought that up because it's like very much trailer fodder, like trailer lines in certain scenes, but
Mhm.
nothing to give away what exactly is going on here. I wish all trailers would do that, but unfortunately that's not what we get. But I think to
Yeah.
wrap up a bow on Into the Spider-Verse, like you said, it has become a classic as it approaches its 5-year anniversary. I don't believe we've missed anything, Mike, unless you have something you want to talk about to wrap things up.
Yeah, just the dynamic between all the spider folks I think is great. We talked about the movie in stages, right? With Miles and his family, then him meeting Peter, then him meeting Peter B and fighting Kingpin and the Prowler. We mentioned all that stuff, but I just love his relationship with Gwen, right? That is something that is not from the comics that this movie did, and they went with that. And I thought that was fantastic. They had great chemistry. Also loved John Mulaney. We mentioned them briefly, but I just love the dynamic of this group of spider people. And I'm kind of sad that we don't get to see them back at it again in the sequel. I kind of wanted to keep this core. We're keeping three, but I wanted to keep all of them together. But maybe they'll cameo or something in the next one. But yeah, I love everything clicks. Like every spider person, like Spider-Man is a character that if you have too many of them, it's kind of like the Bat family where it's like you all do the same thing. I don't know if I need 10 of you, right? But each like Spider Ham is totally different from Penny Parker. I love her mech suit. I love that the spider is the one with the abilities essentially. Like I thought their dynamic was really interesting and fun and kind of crazy, but like this entire movie, it still ends up working beautifully by the end of it.
Yes, I agree. And it's funny you brought up the Bat family is like a lot of those like Nightwing, kind of like Batman, Red Hood, sort of kind of like Batman. It all very feels like spin-offy instead of like natural like progressions of, or at least
Yeah.
different than.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I love the Bat Family, but there's
Yeah.
like 20 members of it, and we only remember like 3 of them. You named 2 of them already. Nightwing, Robin, Red Hood, and a Batgirl, I guess, whichever one, take your pick at that point.
Yeah, Barbara Gordon or Cassandra Cain. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, but yeah, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, to wrap things up, is an absolute stone cold classic as it approaches 5 years. This gets an amazing grade from me. Mike, any final thoughts?
It gets a spectacular grade from me.
Yeah, but it's one of those animated movies that I think generations after us will be appreciating, like years and years to come.
Yeah, it redefined what superhero movies can be in a way very few of them have done. And the fact that, going back to the top of this episode, this recording, right? The fact that this followed up the Emoji Movie will go down in cinematic history alone. Good job, Sony. You redeemed yourself.
Yeah, because legit, I've never seen the Emoji Movie cover to cover. I just can't do it. But I've seen like little snippets of it, and I'm just like, people said yes to this. Suits said yes to this, and then literally the next year, Into the Spider-Verse drops, and it's like the complete like it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like Mr. Hyde, Dr. Jekyll.
Yes. Or more aptly, I guess it's like Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin.
Oh, good point. Yes, yes, I agree.
But
But yeah, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, if you somehow have not seen it, watching out there, see it. Like right now. That's your homework.
go
But
do it.
Mike, thank you so much. I appreciated having you on for this. Your link tree will be in the description. Do you have anything coming up you'd like to plug?
As of right now, I'm working on a script for a James Gunn video. So if you like superhero content, we're going to be breaking down his comic book movie filmography on the Chatter After YouTube channel. I'm still in the scripting phase. That might be out in a few weeks' time. Outside of that, yeah, just follow the link tree. You'll see my writing, you'll see the podcast, all that great stuff there, and just keep it locked here on Ryan's channel. Thank you so much for having me back, talking one of the worst movies ever made and one of the best movies ever made back to back. We are doing Sony proud here by keeping the theme of that going here with this appearance.
Yeah, for sure. But you're always welcome on the channel. Mike's links will be in the description. Go give him a subscribe to his channels, and also go read his stuff on Collider. I'm very much looking forward to the James Gunn video, because talk about a dude who's got like all of the eyes of the comic book movie world on him currently, because he's basically like gone from Marvel to DC, and he's talking all this stuff about his Superman movie. So it's like, all right, James, we have a certain amount of trust in you. Don't mess it up this time, because DC's got a new 5-year plan, and I'm just like, yeah, like it worked out for you the first time. But I'm reserving all my judgments for after the Flash, because I feel like the Flash is going to be like a definitive end, and then it's like we're washing our hands and moving on.
Yeah, that seems to be the plan. Also, fun fact, James Gunn revealed recently his favorite comic book movie of all time is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
The man's got good taste. What can I say?
Great taste.
But yeah, thank you, Mike. It's a privilege as always. And as for this channel, thank you all so much for joining me for the road to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. At the time of my life, reviewing all of these movies, all the Raimi movies, all the Webb movies, I want to thank Mike, but I also want to thank Jacob Martin, my podcast partner, Brevin Thompson for joining me for Spider-Man 3, Matt Wyatt for talking the OG Raimi Spider-Man, and I want to thank Ryan from Realspective for joining me for the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 discussion. This is honestly one of my favorite series that I've done, probably since the AFI project all the way back in 2020. I had such a fun time doing this. But I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I was going to say, before we sign off, watching all of these or revisiting all of these Spider-Man movies, what's been your takeaway? Spider-Man as a character, Spider-Man as a franchise, like what's your takeaway from seeing the evolution of Spider-Man on film from start to finish?
That's interesting. It's interesting you bring that up because I feel like with the various qualities of the movies, it also kind of reflects on where superhero movies were going at the time. Because keep in mind, Spider-Man 2002 was released in 2002, but 2 years prior, we got the first X-Men movie, which I don't think is a perfect movie by any stretch, but it really showed that they're moving on past the Spawns and the Batman and Robins of the world. They're actually trying. And so
Right.
in 2004, we got Spider-Man 2, which showed, okay, they actually have a good idea of what they're doing. Because 2004, we got Spider-Man 2. In 2003, the year prior, we got X2. And then in 2007, it all kind of fell apart with Spider-Man 3. And then in 2006, we got X3, X-Men United, which I don't hate, but I can understand why people wouldn't be so crazy about it.
Then you have Nolan too making Batman Begins and then The Dark Knight, and you see the evolution there too.
Yes, indeed. And then in 2012, you got The Amazing Spider-Man, which definitely feels more like an inspired by Nolan type of, it goes way darker than what Raimi did, even though Raimi's movies were honestly pretty dark, if we're being completely honest.
Yeah.
And then it showed that, like, just I think you can see kind of the ebb and flow of just where comic book media was, like in like going through the peaks and the valleys. And you see the good ones are usually at the peak, and the bad ones are usually either approaching the valleys or we're firmly in the valley at this point.
Yeah. That's an interesting perspective, because I've never actually revisited all of these as quickly or in a row like you have. So that's fascinating that you're able to put that together too. Like, yeah, like basically what we're learning here is when Spider-Man's good, life is good. That's really what it is.
Sort of, kinda, yeah. And it, I didn't touch on the MCU Spider-Man films because I've already reviewed those as they came out. But I feel like I feel like with, like, say, Homecoming, for example, that one came out when MCU was at a bit of a high, and then you got Far From Home, which is coming down from the high that was Endgame, and then you have No Way Home, which is yet another high. So it's it's interesting where you kind of see how good the film is, but also how healthy the culture is going at the time. I feel like there's a lot of parallels that you can do with that.
Yeah. Very fascinating. Very fascinating.
But like I said, I want to thank all the creators that came on to join me for this series. I actually, for the first time ever on this channel, I had a creator join me for a collab on all the reviews that I did in a series, and I'm kind of proud of that. I actually have friends who are willing to part with their precious time to join me on these, and I'm truly grateful. But as for this channel, this is going up on a Sunday, which means on Friday, I'm continuing my road to Asteroid City by reviewing the Darjeeling Limited. I'm reviewing all of Wes Anderson's movies in preparation for it. It's been a trip because Wes Anderson's early films are rough, but it's like we're getting to Fantastic Mr. Fox, Mike, and it's like, okay, now we're back to what I thought this project was going to be, not the are we sure we're gonna try and spin Luke Wilson and Gwyneth Paltrow as lovers, even though they're related? I don't know, but
you see, this goes back to the Spider-Man conversation of watching that evolution of Wes Anderson is always fascinating, because once you hit Fantastic Mr. Fox, you start to see it all come together.
Exactly. But the Darjeeling Limited will be up on the channel as of this video dropping, so give that a check out. But as for this channel, leave a like, subscribe, click the bell to allow notifications. For Mike Thomas, my name is Ryan Cam. We will see you in the next one. You take care.
Excelsior.
Excelsior indeed.